I'm really excited to be here today and to share with you all my insights from my experience. Today our focus is to go beyond assumptions. And I want to explore with you how customer insights can really drive product success. And we'll do that by understanding a little bit more about some techniques that we can use within our businesses and our jobs. And I'll share with you loads of interesting stuff and case studies that will help you understand a little bit more about it. I want to start with some examples. Does anyone remember this product? Google Glasses. That's right. Does anyone own a pair? I guess no, because it's been discontinued. This is the Google Glass. The assumption behind it from Google was that everyone wants to wear these awkward glasses and is happy to share their life completely with everyone. The reality is slightly different. People felt it was very awkward. There was loads of privacy issues with someone keeping on recording everything. And that's why it was actually discontinued, and it wasn't particularly a success. And the lesson here is that product innovation is great, but we can't really ignore how our products make people feel. And this is not an isolated product. I mean, there could be a huge list. I've got a few more examples. The next one is this one. Anyone remember the Amazon Fire Phone? This was a product, of course, from Amazon, and the assumption behind it was that everyone wants their phone to revolve around the shopping experience that Amazon offers. We now know that actually no one really cares about that. A phone is good because it's got a good camera, can edit photos, you've got good video quality. These are the features that people actually want from a phone, not really crappy features that allows you to actually buy things in a different way. And the lesson here is about Amazon really just focusing on how to make money and completely forgetting what the user actually wants. And when you do that, you end up just creating something for your business, not for your users. And the reality is that it just fades out and you have to discontinue and you lose essentially a lot of money. I've got another example. You probably recognize this is Deliveroo Editions. This is actually not discontinued, so we're still probably using it if you're using Deliveroo. And if you're not familiar with it, Deliveroo Editions is the so-called dark kitchens. So the Deliveroo assumption was that people want things fast. And that is true. When we order our burgers, we wanted to get it fast. And so they thought, why don't we create some kitchens in specific hubs where there's loads of demand so that we can deliver really fast? The only problem is those kitchens don't really exist on the high street. So what happens in reality, people think they're ordering from a restaurant, but actually it's this dark kitchen, and nothing was really made particularly transparent, and people felt they were cheated, they were not actually ordering for a real place. And that's why the product, the way the Deliveroo Editions then changed and morphed into something a little bit clearer for people to understand where they're ordering from. And the lesson here is very, very interesting because there is data that people want things faster, but there's so much nuance around that it's very important to understand the visceral needs from people, why they want that and what they're willing to lose in order to achieve that specific goal and that specific need. So product fail not just because the idea is bad, because some of these products morphed and evolved into something more interesting. The problem is that we really need to understand the assumptions behind it. And that means really we need to understand what people actually want and what actually people need. Right, because before I go any further, I introduce myself. Tom just gave me a good introduction. I'm Raffaele, and I'm a product design consultant, currently working for Blue Yonder. And this is some of the clients that I worked with. I've been very lucky to work with the likes of Amazon, which I currently work with. I work for MacArthur Glen and lots of other charities in the UK, designed the website for Crisis and for Dogs Trust, done loads of stuff with PDSA, never really went live, but never mind. And I've done loads of work in the logistics sector, Australia Post, Yamato in Japan, DHL in the US, GXO, and those kind of guys. So quite a lot of examples will come from the retail space and the logistics space, but that will give you a good understanding of how to actually be more customer-centric. And talking about customer centricity, I want to start from a definition, because I think this is really the root of understanding customer insights and building successful products. So Reforge says that customer centricity means two things: deeply understanding the root of your customer's problem and using this understanding to create a competitive advantage through product innovation. And I love this definition because it's rooted in understanding people and what they want, what they need, but deeply, not just asking them, hey, what do you want? And before we understand a little bit more about how we can actually do this, I want to share with you the why behind it. Because we might have a business, we work for businesses, and we feel like this is important, but why is it important? Not just for the sake of it. There's actually some interesting study from McKinsey. In 2018, they actually created an index to understand customer centricity in businesses. And it was all based on like research, design, innovation. They created this long list and they ranked loads of businesses in the world. And the interesting thing is this: the one that were customer-centric, the one that ranked higher, they were also the one that actually made more money and more total revenue for shareholders. So it's important not just because we know it is important, but because it actually makes money. And that's one of the ways we can actually sell it to our businesses, or to justify, if we run our business, that this is important to do, will allow us to make more money. Let's get to the how. How can we actually harness better customers' insights? There's three things that I want to talk to you today. There's three methodologies that I feel like are super, super important: field studies, user interviews, and user testing. And we're going to look at each one, and I'll try to provide as many examples as I can. I mean, what I've prepared realistically. The field studies. So let's start from the definition. So field studies is observing and engaging with users in the real environment. I talk a lot about stores, warehouses, because that's where I've worked for quite a lot of my career, but it's also like going to people's houses, going to people's offices, trying to understand how people relate to their space, also when they use digital products, because that's the whole experience. It's not that we're just on our phone. We have our phone on our sofa. When we go to the loo, we're still on our phone buying stuff. When we are in bed, or when we're double screening, triple screening, that physical environment, how we use that is really important and really, really matters. And one of the things that I really wanted to really stay with you is that field studies are important because what people say is not what people do. And you can only understand that by observing how people do things. So one of the examples that I want to share with you is from my experience creating an app for a warehouse. And as I said, I worked in retail, and one of the key things I've done is to reshape the way that returns happens in retail. So think about you buying a t-shirt on ASOS or a pair of shoes on the Nike website. You try it on, you don't like it, it doesn't fit, and you want to return it. What happens to that parcel? It goes all the way back to a warehouse, and someone then needs to like open the box and say, this is a Nike, this is a ASOS, this is this, or this is that, and send it back to the right retailer, especially when you work for a marketplace. And there's a physical person that needs to do that and needs an application. And that's what I've designed. And initially, we just went with what the stakeholders wanted. So work for a marketplace, we need to make sure that everything goes back to Levi's or Carhartt or Champion and make sure there's no error. So what we focused on is to make sure that everything was super accurate. We filled this app for the operator in the warehouse to be full of information and loads of checkpoints because we didn't trust them. We need to make sure they do the right thing. But then I designed this app and I knew there was something wrong with it. So what I did, I flew to the US, went into the warehouses, and with a prototype, without spending money on developing it, with a simple prototype and faking a return station, we started to understand if that idea really, really worked, and it didn't. Because what we noticed you can see in the image here, with a fake parcel with like fake QR codes on top, and we started to see the people didn't read anything on the app. They didn't read the information, they skipped confirmation pages, and they felt the app was very slow because there were so many checkpoints. So they were so disengaged that in the end they didn't look at anything. And when you're processing like millions of parcels through a year, you need to make sure that people are engaged and people know what they're doing. And definitely what we did initially wasn't the right approach. So by being in the warehouse and seeing how people used it, we managed to actually switch completely our idea. So our aim, instead of being very accurate, was to be very, very fast. Because in that way, people kept being engaged. And I used some design techniques to make sure that people still knew what they were doing. So I've used those like toast notification that the message comes down and then goes back again. So you can see it's green or red straight away, even if you don't read it. So you know if it's right or wrong. And we used sound. So people don't want to look at screen? Fine. We use sound to tell them actually what's happening. If they've scanned the right parcel in the right box, therefore they know if that's going to the right retailer or not. So all of these techniques are really, really useful, but you only can get those insights if you're on the floor, if you're with people in the environment where that application is meant to be used. Another methodology that I want to share with you is user interviews. We all feel like we've done user interviews. It's just chatting to a customer, isn't it? I define them more as a structured or semi-structured kind of conversation. And really what we're trying to do with user interviews is to try to understand about people's experiences, what their goals are, what their pain points, their needs are, not just having a chat. So, spoiler alert, it's not about asking your customer what they want. It's not even asking customers, do you like this? It's going much, much deeper. And that's the only way that we can actually gather those pain points and user needs that then we can use to create a successful product. So I'm going to share with you another example. This is from Doddle. I don't know if many of you have remembered Doddle. If anyone is from Brighton, they used to have a shop at the station, and their idea was you can take a T-shirt, don't need to package, just take the T-shirt to the Doddle store, and they package it and return it for you. Or you can go there and collect an item. If you're not at home, you can actually get it delivered there. Well, spoiler alert, you don't know Doddle because that business model didn't work. It was too expensive to rent the shops in every single station. But helped Doddle create a lot of technology to power those stores. So what they did in 2019, they decided to sell all the stores and to become a tech company. And that's when I joined Doddle with the hard job to transform the company from a simple shop to a tech company that was going to go international, which we did. But what we needed to do is to deliver the right message to say, hey, we are a tech company, we've got these products, and these products help you doing X, Y, and Z. And the only way that we managed to do that was by talking to our customers, running a lot of user interviews, and working a lot with marketing and sales, in my case, because they knew quite a lot of the industry and what was going on. But it's not just going there and say, hey, what do you want? We're a tech company, we've got all these features. It's really trying to understand who we're selling to. Is it the CTO, the CFO, is it a product manager who is coming to our website to try and buy this technology? But also trying to understand how can we capture their attention and what are they actually trying to do? What's the task they're accomplishing on the website? So we had all these deeper questions for our customers, not simply, hey, what do you want? And that is what helped us shaping the website and then the product too. And some of the things that we did were pretty simple, but really, really effective in order to get that lead generation that we needed. So we were in the B2B space all of a sudden, and we understood that people were coming to the website for very specific things. First of all, we were dealing with really high-level people, like the CFO and CTOs, and most of those people had a very specific thing. Either the bosses said, hey, return doesn't work, go and find something to solve it, or they looked at the numbers and they were seeing they wasted a lot of money, so they had to find a way to make sure they were recuperating that money. And when we started to understand that really changed the way that we wanted to put the messages on the website. Because it was not about, hey, this is all our features. Have a look. They're great. They're beautiful. It was more about, you have this problem. We know it because we've done those user interviews, and we're going to solve it for you this way. And then we can talk about every other thing. But the other stuff that we noticed was that we were a pretty new company, so we needed to be credible. So one of the things that we invested in was thought leadership. We had a fantastic salesperson who wrote loads of stuff online, and we used that blog to actually get people onto the website. And then we created very simple features, like book a call or add me on LinkedIn, so that allowed us to start those conversations with the customers. And we knew what they were interested in because they came from a very specific blog section. So all of those techniques really allowed us to get that lead generation. And the only way that we were able to do that is because we talked to them and we asked those very deep questions that we were sure that we knew what they needed and wanted. And the last example is usability testing. This is another incredible technique that I find very, very useful. And I do a lot of this. It's simply like understand if your solution is actually right. So you actually use prototypes to talk to people and understand if that specific solution solves their problem. Because most of the time you do the interviews, you do the research, you feel like you understand your customers. You create a solution, but then do you actually know if the way you've solved the problem works? The only way to do that is to really put that solution in front of your customers and see if that works. And usability testing is a really good way of doing that. And I'll offer you another case study. This is when I worked with Australia Post, and we basically allow them to create a network of post offices and of licenses, essentially, to allow customers to collect their items from there. So you don't get that delivered to home, but you can go to the off license and pick it up. And what I did, when we had that project, I just ran a lot of usability testings. We had the product that looked like this, and you can see there was like a huge list of so many parcel shops and off licenses and post offices. And the interesting things, what I noticed, that people scrolled up and down, and everyone we observed clicked on the first one. So that really was like, okay, this is probably something that we can do. Why are they doing that? And then I looked also at other websites, what other people are actually doing, observed how people used it. And the interesting things was, this was quite a few years ago, Apple Pay was quite new, but everyone was clicking on the Apple Pay or PayPal. And I was trying to understand why are they doing that? And the reason we discovered is just because everything is pre-filled. So you've already chosen the T-shirt or the pair of shoes that you wanted. When you go through checkout, you just want it to be quick. So observing people by doing all of these things really allowed us to understand the type of solution that we actually needed. And we started to really see, this is one of the prototypes that we had. We had people filling in this form to get stuff delivered. And we wanted to understand if the task was going to be completed, how long it took, and it was way too long. Those are the answers that we really needed. So we reshaped the project completely, and we decided to make our collection point widget, which then went on websites like Nike, Uniqlo, H&M, all those guys in Australia. We wanted to make it super fast, so it was the fastest way to check out. And then the solution is, as you see, a very simple, add your postcode, click on search, and everything is pre-selected for you. So all you need to do, you just need to go and pay. Because we noticed that everyone chooses the first one anyway, so what's the point? And that really allowed us to move the needle from 1.2 to 3.7% of how many people actually went to the collection. And it sounds like small, but when you talk about millions of people, the numbers is pretty big. So those are the three techniques that I wanted to share with you today. Field studies, user interviews, and usability testing. That's what I really feel like allow us to go beyond assumption and to understand more about our customers. And I want to finish this with some do's and don'ts. So we talked about these techniques, but I want to give you some more insights about what to do and what not to do. I'm going to start with the don'ts. So the first one of the things I see so many times when you do user interviews is to ask people, would you do this? Would you buy that? Would you use this product? That's a very bad question, because as humans, scientifically proven that we are very bad at predicting the future. So we don't know what we actually want. You probably don't even know what you want for lunch. So how could you say, oh, would you use this or that? So what I usually do is to ask about the past. So for example, how did you return the last pair of shoes that you bought? And if they tell me, oh, actually I had that for 3 weeks in the bedroom looking at me and completely forgot and then rushed at the last minute, that gives me some really good insight, and it's true because that actually happened. So trying to connect to the past and to the most recent experience that people had around the product that you're building or the idea that you have got in your mind. And the next one is the most common, pitching your idea. You're so excited, I've got this idea, it's amazing. You go to the customer, you're like, do you like it? What do you think? People just don't want to hurt you. They'll be like, oh, bless, I'm going to say it's nice, even if they don't really care or they don't even understand what you're talking about. So what I always say, test your assumptions. That proves your idea and the benefits of your idea so much more. Trying to understand what the problems are and if your idea could potentially solve that specific problem. Because pitching, it just doesn't really work. The next one is about surveys. We love a survey, don't we? How many of you run surveys and collect loads of data that you can shape the way you like at the end of the day? You can make whatever narrative you want from a survey. I'm not saying they're bad. They're useful, but they're so shallow and superficial. Who actually completes it? It's probably someone who's annoyed, or maybe some friends who says, yeah, everything is great. It's useful to use the survey data, but I always suggest to carry on some more research after and to use those people, those numbers, or open questions to find out a little bit more about the why. So someone has said that they like something, why did they like that? The NPS score, pointless score, but maybe they've given you a 7 or a 6, so you can understand why that's the case. And that's why survey data always follow up with some more in-depth research. And the next one, oh, this is nice. You show an idea, and people say, oh, I love it. And you're like, great, next question. But it's nice to have good feedback. I mean, you want good feedback. But then what I feel like is important to do is to go a little bit further. So trying to understand, why did they like it? Did they like it because it just looks good? Does it solve a problem? Trying to understand a little bit more about that nice feedback. Otherwise, it's just really, really shallow. It doesn't really help you. And the last one, we talked about this when we talked about field studies. What people say is not what people do. So just make sure that you follow up with some observation, trying to understand how people use your product, use your website, and follow that up, because that's where you're actually going to uncover the right level of insights. And that's me. Thank you, everyone.